Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 44. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and I'm sorry for the delay. I know it's been a minute since I've been around, but to be honest with you, things have been kind of busy around Holix HQ. We've been teasing this online a lot over the past couple of months, but right now the Holix development team has been working very hard on a brand new version of the platform, and I, as the guy who runs the company marketing, have been running around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to get all of the materials and press emails and all that jazz in order so that we can be ready for our relaunch that will hopefully take place in November. I realized about a week ago that I was really starting to miss the show, and I had heard from some of you that you were wondering when a new episode would be live, so I took it upon myself to record mini podcasts in a very short amount of time. I have the next month of Inside Music already in the can, and it's just a matter of waiting to release each episode. So there are at least 5 episodes ready to go right now, and we will release at least one a week from now until early November, starting today with my buddy Mike Hansen of Pentimento. Now, if you're not somebody that follows the indie punk alternative world, you might not know the name Pentimento, but you should. Hailing from Buffalo, New York, Pentimento have been crafting their unique take on punk music for the better part of the last half decade, and on October 23rd of this month, their new full-length album, I No Longer, will be released through Bad Timing Records. You might remember the name Bad Timing Records as it's owned by Thomas Nassif and Zach Cirillo, 2 former guests of Inside Music. Anyways, Mike and I have known each other for a very long time, and when I knew that the new Pentimento album was coming up, I figured it was the perfect opportunity to get him here on the show. I assumed we would spend the hour talking about the band's new album, how it came together, and what they hope to accomplish with it, which we did cover, but the conversation actually kind of became about something much bigger than that. Mike and I are both in our late 20s now, and we're starting to think a lot about how much longer we can chase the dreams we've had since we were teenagers versus the need to support ourselves as adults. And it's a really, really hard thing to deal with as an individual, and even when you're talking with somebody else about it, it's kind of hard to be like, maybe we won't get to the place that we always thought we would, or maybe this is as good as it'll get, or maybe things will only go worse from here. There's a lot of what ifs in life, and I guess you never really get away from them, but as you get closer to 30 and you find yourself still chasing the dreams you had when you were 16, you really start to think about whether or not you're ever going to reach a destination. And Mike and I talk about that a lot in this conversation. I don't mean to make it sound like a bummer, because though the conversation does have bummer moments, I don't think it's a bummer conversation. I think it's a necessary conversation about the realities of growing up in the music business. And I think you're all going to really enjoy what Mike has to say. Before we get there, of course, we're going to have a little message from our sponsor, which I'm pretty sure you know who it is. And we're also going to play a little bit of music from Pentimento's new album, again titled I No Longer. That record is actually streaming in full online right this second, and I encourage you all to go listen to it on the Holix blog, holixdaily.com. We'll have a link to stream the entire album soon, and if you look up Pentimento anywhere online, I'm sure you will find a link. So yes, definitely please check out their album after you listen to this podcast, or before, or maybe before, then listen to the podcast, and then once more after it, maybe hear it in a whole different way. Whatever the case, definitely support Pentimento. As for the sponsor of today's show, it is Holix, the internet's leading digital promotional distribution platform. Whether you're looking to get your music in front of the press or you need a little help fighting piracy, Holix has the tools you need. For more information on Holix and access to a free 30-day trial, visit www.holix.com. That's www.haulix.com. Okay? I'm going to play a little bit of music from Pentimento, and then we'll get to the conversation with Mike. Thanks for listening.
It's a long way from lonely to home. The miles and miles of silence, just us together as we were alone. We made small talk, just like strangers.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. Well, thanks a lot for calling. Definitely appreciate that.
No problem, dude. So I don't even know. It's so much to talk about. Like, you and I know each other so well, but we haven't actually talked about this album like at all.
Yeah, actually, you're right. That's actually a surprise because I was pretty moved by the thing that you said when you got the record or you heard the first jam and you told me about that little incident you had on the plane there.
We can talk
And
about it.
so,
I have no shame.
yeah, no, dude. I mean, that was super cool. That was super cool. So.
Well, I didn't expect to hear the album so soon, and when I got it, I was in Texas. I had just flown to Texas for like a runaway weekend, and we were like getting ready to go to the airport in the morning to get on the plane. And I was like, "Oh crap, I got to download this, see what happens." And I should have known, like, that I should have waited. I should have waited. I could have like gotten home, like gotten some space, maybe had some like drinks, really like gotten into the mood. And instead, I was like, I'm just gonna do this at like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm just gonna hit it hard.
Oh man, I'm sorry if it wrecked your day. And
It did
shit.
not wreck my day at all. Like, we had a fine drive. We had a very nice Texan Uber driver take us to the airport, and when I got through the line,
All right.
get on the plane, and like Lisa passes out right away, and so I'm just sitting on, like, we're on a smaller plane, so it's just the two of us in our row, and I'm just like sitting there, hit play, and before the first song's done, I'm like trying not to wake her up with sniffling, and I'm just like, no, I'm good, I'm gonna be fine. And I liked it. This is like the first song, and I never really do this, but I had been writing, I had sat down planning to like work on a bunch of other things I needed to write and just listen to the album in the background. And I caught myself typing out the lyrics to the opening track just because I was like, oh, like, he's just hitting me right in the face right now. And I kind of write this down. And I literally woke Lisa up, I'm like tapping her on the shoulder, and I'm like, hey, read this. And she's like, what is this? And I was like, it's the opening lyrics to the new Pentimento album. And she was like, well, that seems like a sad way to start the day.
Oh man.
And I was like, yeah, it is, but like, look.
Man, well, I mean, I have to say, dude, that's really, that's something I really appreciate, because I have definitely had that feeling before where, like, I'm listening to a record or something like that, and I don't know why, but I feel compelled to, like, write whatever they just said down. It's just something about, like, scribbling it out makes sense.
It does.
In that way, but so strange, man.
It is. Well, it's like when I write it, I think, I don't know, for me, it's like writing it down. There's that thing where I want to know what it is that like is striking that chord. Cause it's more than just, like, oh, this song's really good, but it's like, it hits something very like personal to you. And like, I have to like write it down and be like, what is the metaphor here? Or what is like that line that is just like cutting you to the core?
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, I think, part of the reason that I appreciate something like that so much is because, again, I can remember when certain songs or records or bands did that to me, and that feeling, that sort of that type of compelled, to kind of just write it down just so you can kind of figure it out for yourself or whatever it is that you do, it's a very particular feeling, you know what I mean? And it's something that I don't know that I anticipated anybody doing with our record. When I started making music, or I started doing band things, I never thought that my record would inspire that type of feeling in another person. I mean, of course I wanted people to like it, and of course I wanted people to sing along and, do all of that stuff. That's super important. But I don't think that I ever sat down to think about, like, what's it going to be like if somebody feels that strange wash of a feeling come over them when they're listening to something that makes them want to write it out as if it's their song, and that's really important to me. That's super cool. I think it's huge that people would be able to connect to it that way, because I know what it meant to me to do that sort of thing. I know how exciting it could be to do that sort of thing. So I really appreciate it, man.
Well, I think the key to being able to pull off that kind of songwriting is that you go into it not expecting, because I feel like something that has always kind of been like a signature part of your music is that it feels so personal. Like, the songs are so clearly a reflection of like your perspective, and there's a thing where it's like it's so personal that for some reason it connects with people, which is kind of backwards, because usually those are like, the biggest songs are the ones that are kind of the most generic. But in this case, it's like you get so personal that someone's like, no, this is me.
Well, I think that, I certainly strive for that as a songwriter or artist, if you can call it that. But I think we now, what I'm lucky to be a part of in this generation of like punk music is a lot of openness to that sort of thing. So while my predecessors and all the bands that I really loved growing up, maybe their messages were a little bit more accessible, like with the NoFX or the Rancid type bands of the world that I was really into when I started listening to punk music, or stuff like that, where it's like, okay, this is about politics, or this is about drug use, and you can tell it's like an umbrella thing kind of on purpose, which that's cool, you know, and like you said, the biggest songs are super relatable that way, and that's why that happens. But in this generation of music, you know, let's take a band on top of everything like the Wonder Years, you know, or like a Real Friends type band, or The World Is, or, you know, a Citizen, or Modern Baseball, or, you know, I mean, you name it. The biggest bands kind of in our world are, I mean, there's certainly an accessibility. Of course there is, you know what I mean? Otherwise these guys would be stuck in their bedrooms just playing acoustic guitars. But it's like they get in front of people, and part of their success is contingent on being as personal as possible. I mean, and not to compare our band to any of those bands or anything like that. It's just, I'm talking about the very broad spectrum of emo and punk music, and, you know, even hardcore bands and stuff like that. Whatever's going on that is responsible for Pentimento, like having a platform at all, or whatever we get to be a part of, whatever you want to call it, whether it's a genre or a scene or whatever, something is happening where people are actually experiencing success based on their, you know, deeply personal lyrics and deeply personal connections to other people because of that. And, you know, so when I mention a band like Modern Baseball, you know, that's a band that's not afraid to use somebody's name in a song, or the name of a street or a place or whatever, a very specific thing. And, you know, they realize that in writing that, maybe it's possible that somebody would listen to it and feel alienated because they don't know these people, they don't know this place, they don't know this thing you're talking about specifically. But somehow they do it in such a sincere way that it makes other people want to mean it too. It makes them want to learn more about these places and people and things, and it makes them feel like they're in on something, you know, or at least that's the feeling I get. So it's super interesting to approach it from that angle. And I mean, I can certainly agree that in the pop world, or even rock music in general, it seems like a lot of generic lyrics are passed off as like the meaningful stuff that people are making serious connections with. And that's always strange to see. I think any artist that's like really about it on a spiritual level, let's call it, you know, they can pick that sort of stuff out. But when you do find this sincerity, it's like a treasure. You know, you're coming across something that maybe you didn't expect, but it's just so wonderful you can't help but want to covet it. You know, you need to make it yours too. So that's why I feel like it's very important for me to do things where, I mean, I certainly like to edit myself in a way that makes the songs a little bit ambiguous, I suppose. It's hard for me to be overtly specific and feel like I'm still able to accomplish what I want as a writer. But I think, you know, part of the editing process, or part of the fun part, or part of the art in general, being able to kind of piece your words together so that they can be relatable, and so that it can make sense for a lot of people in a lot of different situations. And in turn, that's become one of my favorite parts of being in a band at all. Just having the opportunity to speak with people who listen to this music, and they take it for something completely different than what I would have imagined the song was about. But that's the part I love. That's the part I kind of nerd out about a little bit. It's just so incredible to have this like opportunity to even do this at all and connect with a few people over it, because when I get to hear what they think it's about, I understand that even if I'm putting pen to paper, even if I'm the one doing the lyrical stuff, it's not even really mine. It's only you know, one version of what the thing is, or what it means. And I really enjoy that about making music and about art in general. So I mean, that's what I take away from the whole thing, I guess. You know what I mean? And another reason why it's really cool of you to like appreciate the lyrical stuff on that level. And I know it's a bummer and stuff like that, but when thinking about that song, Small Talk for Strangers was always the intro to the record. I mean, we went through a period where we thought maybe it was the closer, but from day one, it was like, when I wrote it, I was like, this is an intro to the record, and I wanted to do this setup for the whole thing. And we had this idea to make it a moving piece and have it kind of be a cohesive thing where it's like fluidly moving track by track. So it is listenable front to back. You know, we just wanted to try to accomplish that.
It's funny that you say that because I was actually revisiting the album this morning, and I was thinking that "Tell Me" is a very nice bookend that kind of works with "Small Talk" as the opener. But you could switch them almost. But I think that they do. There's a similar feel to the way they both kind of begin and fade in, where it's like, oh, there's. Yeah, I could see you swapping. I could see "Small Talk" being at the end of the record.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, I mean, it's funny you say that too, because when we were finishing Tell Me, we wanted it to have a vibe, and actually visited ideas about like the maybe the piano melody line would be the melody from Small Talk or something like that. But the songs are, I mean, a lot of the songs on the record are in the same key, but that those songs in particular are in the same key on purpose. They use essentially the same chords the whole time on purpose. You know what I mean? To kind of set that up for you as a listener, so you do get the feel that it is a bookend, like you mentioned. So I'm glad that that kind of comes across that way.
Yeah, another thing you touched on this really well, but I do want to go back to the lyrics thing for a second because I do feel like you hit it well. Like Modern Baseball is a band that gets very specific, and the Wonder Years too. They get so specific that even though you're not from that place, there's a part of you that kind of feels like you are. Like you have a weird Philly pride, even though you're not from Philly. You're like, oh
Dude,
yeah,
I mean, 1,000%. I remember listening to like early Against Me records
yes,
and listening to them sing about like eating garbage out of dumpsters in Gainesville, Florida, or throwing bricks at Starbucks and stuff. And I could hear the sincerity in that music, and it made me want to mean it too. So I would go to these shows and scream the lyrics back at them because I loved it. I was so appreciative of that experience for some reason. I don't know how I connected to it that way, but in my young, like, 15 or 14-year-old punk rock brain that was just mad at the world, like, it made so much sense, and I just loved it. So I totally understand why um, it's a thing for bands to accomplish, but it's real. Doing that stuff that's weirdly specific, it can still make sense to people.
exactly. And I don't know. What I find so interesting about how your twist on it, at least in my mind, and you kind of touched on this, is that there's a little bit more of an ambiguous nature where it might be the very specific details that work for Modern Baseball. For you, it's more that I feel like you hit on these moments or like these ideas of a moment that people relate to because they're the kind of things that happen at different points in your life, but in pretty much any relationship that can go awry or that kind of plateaus at some point. There are these moments that you kind of touch on lyrically where it's like maybe that didn't happen to you, but it happened to me in this other scenario. And it's like Small Talk for Strangers is something where it's like, for me, I think of a relationship that falls apart, like a very specific moment in a relationship for me that fell apart. And I'm sure
Yeah.
it's not the same for you, but it's that you hit that moment where I was like, that is what it was like in that moment for me.
1,000%, man. I mean, you nailed it, and that's sort of the goal every time. It's maybe I can't necessarily penetrate your personal story, but if I can't do that, maybe I can bring you into mine a little bit. Like, Clever Reason, for example, it's just a story about these two people. It was inspired by some real life events, and it is a true story about two people, but it's not mine. It was something that after I had a conversation with a person, I was compelled to kind of put pen to paper about it. And so it is about one thing, but of course, it's like I want that song to be relatable, and I certainly find things in there to relate to. As just as a person, and when I listen back to that song, I can appreciate it for different reasons, even though it's about somebody that is not me. So I really enjoy that part about writing too, and it's cool because that's the goal every time, is just to write the song that I can feel like it matters to me, but so can you, and it doesn't have to be you searching for what I meant necessarily, but I don't know, man, like the songs that I wrote 4 years ago for this band make sense in a very different way now than they did then, and I really love that about it. I love that songs and music has the ability to make sense to you in different ways or mean different things to you over time, and that's when I think you can measure whether or not things are actually good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I actually was thinking about that when you and I first actually met in person in Methuen forever ago. I remember telling you about how the first EP, like what it was to me and what I related it to in my life, had been like when I had been engaged when I was in college, and it like ruined it, like when it exploded. I was like, and you nailed the way I felt in that moment. And you were like, oh, this happened to me when I was like 18. And I was like, oh gosh, so we're in way different places in life, but you had nailed it. And I remember that has always stuck with me. And I always remember that there's this age gap between us, but I'm always like, yeah, but he's had that experience that I've had, and maybe he's just now had it and I had it a couple of years ago, but like we've been there and I get it. And I don't know, like that's always stuck with me since we had that conversation where I'm always like, I don't know how you do it, but you keep finding a way.
Well, I definitely remember that conversation and that time in Methuen. Man, that was like, wow, 4 years ago. That was like
probably
our very first tour.
Yeah, that venue is so tiny, the 1837 pub, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It was like a little upstairs bar type deal. I remember we had also played a show there with Light Years and Maker once, and there was a birthday party in the basement of that venue. And as we were loading our gear out, some sort of brawl started happening. So we were like trying to scoot our stuff across the street as fast as possible. And I just remember people were getting rowdy. There was like little kids screaming, and the cops came, and there was like windows smashing. It was like from a movie. It's pretty cool. But haven't been back there since, unfortunately. But we made some like lifelong buddies, people that we still hear from every 6 months or so that are just still keeping up with us somehow and still doing the thing. So it's really, really cool that especially like you. This is a great example. I mean, we're both on to different things at different points in our quote-unquote careers, but we somehow keep weaving in and out of, each other's lives that way, so it's cool.
Yeah, that's just one of the weird things about how the music industry works. And I was going to ask you, is Pentimento a career now? Do you look at it as a career? Is it weird to think of it as a career?
Yeah, it's definitely weird to think of it as a career. I mean, because our band is not huge or anything.
It's not full time, so to say.
Yeah, if it was like Jimmy Eat World, then I'd be like, oh yeah, it's of course a career. And I've always wanted to do this since I was like 7 years old and like whatever. But I mean, the reality is that like we are a small band, and we are a band that struggles even at this level. But with the new record coming out, obviously we have our fingers crossed that it kind of pushes us forward a bit. So that's the important thing about this record for us. We really, really like have high hopes for, just doing things like being marketable for support tours or bringing more kids out to shows and stuff like that. Because of course, part of the whole band thing is wanting to get to be successful and share the music with more people and have the shows be, more full and do cooler support tours and whatever, just move up to the next level. Obviously, that's what you hope for when you put out records and stuff like that. It's part of the science behind the whole thing, I guess, So we just have that hope. So I'll say that my career is, I basically have a 9-to-5 as a marketing coordinator for the American Veterans National Service Foundation. So that's kind of what I do beyond the band. And if I had to say, anything career-wise, it would definitely come down to that. But my first love is obviously Pentimento. I would love it to be the career that I have, and it's certainly something that we still dream about. It's just that reality seeps in a little bit as you get older. I'm about to be 27. I just want to do things like a real guy sometimes, and just have a normal life where it's like stable and dependable and not routine, but stable, just something like that. And touring doesn't exactly provide that, not at this point. I mean, the band sustains itself, but it's not like we're making crazy dollar amounts off of Pentimento. You know what I mean? If we come home at the end of a tour with extra money, we can split it, or we save it for the next tour and the merch order and all the other shit we have to do, like pay rent at our practice space and, just whatever. It's not a money maker for us. It's just something that's able to sustain itself at this point. But I mean, to do this for another year would be really, really tough for us because, I mean, dude, like I have 47 cents in my bank account right now, and that's just the reality of it. I had to like buy a whole bunch of stuff before this tour, and I'm not complaining. That's just part of what you get when you sign up to be in a band. So it's just something that we have to deal with as it comes. But it is frustrating, and it is a bummer. And I would like to not do that forever if it's possible. And now that the band is kind of we've been touring for a few years. We're approaching like a 4-year mark on that, and we've actually like been a band, or to some capacity we've been playing together for like 5 years, and I think everybody's just kind of ready to like do the make or break thing, as far as this LP is concerned. And it's like a sad reality, I guess, but it's something that we've all had to come to terms with as we get more serious about the other things we do outside the band. So, like I said, man, we just don't want to be paycheck to paycheck forever. And when you go on tour and you have to, live on like $5 a day and stuff, that's part of what you sign up for, and it's just the way that we've done things for the last few years, but it's tough to do that. It's really, really tough to look back on everything and just be like, holy shit, man, am I like making the right choice? Should I focus on other things? How do the rest of the guys feel? And then of course you have to deal with what it would be like to walk away from your art. And anything that I've learned or gained about like music or songwriting or whatever, like where would I go with that? What would I do with that? So it's scary and nerve-wracking at the same time, but it's just about having a realistic perspective. Luckily we do have a lot of great people in our corner. Like we're lucky enough to have Bad Timing and Jason Parent booking us at APA, so that's certainly cool. It definitely helps, and I know that puts us in a world that's well beyond where 90% of bands are. So of course we're thankful for that, and we know that we shouldn't take advantage of it or take it for granted, I should say. We definitely should not take where we're at for granted, even though we do struggle, or even if we are a small band. It's still important that we have these resources. So of course we're still pushing for things and trying to get tours, and we're still excited about the record coming out, and that doesn't change. It's not like we gave up on it or anything like that. It's just, like I said, man, we're kind of like at a crossroads now about like what we actually need to do to keep this band afloat. And it just comes down to hoping to fuck that the record helps the band grow,
No, I mean, that makes complete sense. I mean, it's weird. So this week I've really kind of stacked all of my podcasts for like the next 5 weeks. Everyone was just available this week. And I was like, all right, well, we'll do them all. So I'll just have like 7 hours of conversations and we'll just break them up over the next couple of weeks. But yesterday, I was on the phone with Tilly and Pearson from Dance Gavin Dance and stuff. And he's 27. He just turned 28. I'm about to be 28, and you're about to turn 27. So we're all around the same point in our lives. But it's weird that this is a similar theme that's come up. And even though Dance Gavin Dance is obviously a more sizable band, like the desires and the idea of like, our relationship with like how we feel about this quote unquote career we lead and like the things we want out of life starts to change around this point. And it's really a time of like reassessing what it is you're doing, and that panic of like, what else could I do? Or what else would I do?
That's exactly it. I mean, yeah, you're nailing it. He nailed it. And, of course that band has been through a ton of ups and downs, and like, I get it. I totally understand why they would come to that head as well. But, like you said, it's just about taking a step back and kind of reassessing where you're at once you realize like, all right, man, well, maybe not everybody just gets to blow up. Of course, like you should work hard and believe in what you do, but maybe, those spots where the general public says, yes, we accept you. You can now sell out this 1,000-cap venue, or like whatever happens, whatever kind of song you have to write in order to do that and stuff, or however you have to market yourself, maybe we just missed it or they missed us or whatever happened. And I just feel like that's what's going on with this record, man. Like if we didn't do it with this one, this is like literally the best we can do, like, or at least at this point. So like, as I've sat on these songs for a while and listened back, I certainly hear the things that I would do differently already, which is kind of exciting, I guess, as a songwriter. Like, not that I don't like it or anything. I do love the record, but I already hear like, okay, next time you write an LP, think about this thing or think about that thing or whatever, you know what I mean? Just stuff I want to make sure of tightening up nuts and bolts for the next time we go to put out something. But that's obviously another thing entirely. It's just that, I just feel like we tried so hard to make we spent a month in Baltimore in the studio, which is like a reality for a ton of bands, but that was our first time doing anything like that. Every other thing we've recorded was kind of in the comfort of our backyard at GCR Studios, which is like literally 4 blocks away from my house. And it is, about the same distance from where our practice studio is. So we had it made as far as that was concerned. And then we decided that it would be better to do something that took us out of our comfort zone. We had heard so much about Paul Levitt, and so many people advocated for his work, and we were on tour with Have Mercy at the time. They showed us their record in our van when they got it back from him, and we were just like, man, like, this is what it sounds like when you work with this guy. Like, we got to do it. So we decided, let's buck up, let's try to put ourselves in an uncomfortable position so that we can make a record that sounds that way, that sounds like we were desperate to do something great. And we spent a lot of time doing pre-production, and then when we actually started tracking the record, that was another set of frustrations entirely and stuff, just because of where we were. Our living conditions, or just the vibe of the city, or where we were, wasn't like the safest spot of all time either. So like we were just confined to like this square mile basically, and no friends, no job, no nothing like that. So we did get to hang out with people every now and again, but it certainly wasn't like it is at home, or like when you're at the studio at home and your buddies are walking in with pizza all the time or whatever. It was a completely different experience, and we just had a lot more time than ever, oddly enough, to look at our own music and think about it and talk about it and open up and try to change things. And also having the perspective of Paul was really, really good, because he's an outside source and he's a trusted guy because it's what he does for a living. And, so it just made, it was cool. It made for a good experience as far as this record goes. But again, I just really think like this is the best that our band can do right now. So and also, some of these songs are like 2 years old already. By the time they're out, it's like Sink or Swim was a demo I was kicking around during the Inside the Sea days. So, even that song is like, I'm not even sure our band sounds like that at all anymore. But I'm excited to find out, and of course I want to know what this record is going to do. I'm really looking forward to seeing how well it's received and stuff, or if it's received well. But, man, oh man, like I just really think that if we can't interest people with this one, then we're probably screwed,
No, I think that's a fair way to put it, man. I think that's, I get it. Like, when we like not in anywhere near the same thing, but I thought for a long time that UTG was going to be the thing that like took off for me. And then when we lost Spin earlier this year, and it like fell on us, and it was like, okay, well, if we can like get a Patreon that pays for the site, then we'll do that for a while and we'll see if it takes off. But it's this moment where you have to be like, this is what I love, but I have to like, like the realities of living, basically. Like I have to, and I have no greater fear than when I'm in an interview with somebody, or I'm at a panel at some conference and someone's like, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, don't ask. Stop.
Right.
I can't plan that far ahead.
That's a crazy thing. Yeah, that's a crazy thing to try to imagine, dude, because at the end of the day, whether it's your website and it's your livelihood, or it's your band and it's what you're trying to do artistically, you're still putting all you've got into it, time-wise, effort-wise, money-wise, whatever, and you do make sacrifices and stuff like that. And of course, like I think listeners, people who are coming to the shows or interacting with your band or buying your records or whatever, or clicking on your stuff on your website or following your Twitter accounts or telling their friends about it, however that works, like all that stuff is so important, but it's not like it's unseen. It's just like, that's the real stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's so crazy how overlooked it seems to be that like, dude, like we're a small band for sure, but I wonder what it would be like if we had a chance to like show the world what it's actually like to, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say? Like if people really understood what it was like to be a small band, I'm sure most people do to some degree or whatever, and they realize that like supporting that sort of thing is what keeps the whole community alive. But it's like, man, dude, some bands, like, let's talk about Half-Hearted Hero for a minute, or like Born Without Bones, for example. You know,
Exactly.
both bands from your area that are, in my opinion, like some of the greatest music that I've ever heard, some of my favorite music that I've ever
I
heard,
agree.
stuff that I would love to show people until the end of time. And I don't understand why all of these people aren't making $1 million. You know, like, those are the bands that I think really need to be like in the limelight. But for whatever reason, it just didn't click. You know, and that's a crazy thought to me. You know, that people can still put everything they have and make something truly great and truly beautiful, and it just doesn't happen to catch. So it goes by the wayside, and then other things get to be popular instead. You know, and I'm not discrediting any of the music that is popular. Of course, you know, I certainly have a lot of respect for the bands that are really doing it, no matter what. But you know, I can't help but feel for all of the bands that I think deserve to be huge and just somehow are not. So
No, I think that's perfectly fine. Well, especially Born Without Bones. I think Baby is one of the best songs of like the last 5 years, and no one knows it. I mean,
dude,
it has its fans, but you know.
1,000%. I thought that Say Hello was one of the coolest records ever. Learning that like Scott put that whole thing together independently for the most part. He's playing on the record most of the instruments. He's like a child when he wrote those songs. I just couldn't even believe it, you know.
Yeah.
And man, I think back to like when I was young and I was getting into bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit and shit like that. I had this babysitter who was a little older than me. I might have been in like fifth or sixth grade, and I'd see her around and see her with her friends, and they were wearing like Earth Crisis T-shirts or like NoFX T-shirts or whatever, and I had no idea what that stuff was because music like wasn't real unless it was on TV for me. Like unless it like MTV or the radio played it, like I didn't really think music existed beyond that. I did not understand it. And then they told me, they were like, oh, well, this is like underground music, and like these are some of our favorite bands, and we don't even care about that MTV shit. And I was like, how is that possible? And then I started listening, and then things started to click, and now I completely get why those bands that nobody had ever heard of at the time were a big deal to them, and why it made so much sense, because it was just so far beyond anything that had ever happened musically yet. And that's how I feel when I listen to a band like Half-Hearted Hero or Born Without Bones, or you know, the 2,000 other bands I could come up with off the top of my head that I think are incredible but don't get enough recognition. You know, like, it's amazing. But that's just, it's part of life, you know, and that's part of what we're realizing too. Like, sometimes it just doesn't matter how hard you try or how bad you want it, you know. Like, maybe that should be the thing that keeps you going at all times. And of course, everybody that is successful has the stamina to thank for getting them there. You know, I believe that everybody who's doing that thing has to work hard to a degree. Even, you know, like the Justin Biebers of the world, he's still on tour, man. He's still got shit to do,
He
you
still
know,
hustles.
and it's still a job. So even though people think like a guy like that probably has it pretty easy and he's got a ton of money and stuff, or he's very successful and whatever, dude, it's a grind. So regardless of where you're at on the spectrum, it's a thing you have to work hard at. So that's like a given. But I mean, for our band, it's a fingers crossed thing at this point. And we, of course, like, we have faith in the record and we all appreciate it and hope that it can do something for us. But man, it's just kind of where we're at. So
No, dude, that's just how it goes though. Like you hit it on the head pretty well. I mean, there's like, I guess it's always true, and you always kind of know it. But the older you get, it's like you realize just how much success, especially in like entertainment, is really a roll of the dice at the end of the day. Like, who gets it and who doesn't. There's some that are obviously going to make it, but a lot of the time it comes down to like right place, right time, right. You know, they were the first one to get heard that did that thing, whatever the case is.
yeah, 1,000%, man. I mean, a lot of times we hear, dude, if this band happened 10 years ago, you guys would be huge. And that's like, it's an interesting compliment. It's something that every time I hear it, it sticks in my head, and it's just like, well, man, like, that's not possible, so why don't you just come to our shows now? How about that? Like, I don't know.
It's frustrating.
definitely.
Or it's frustrating to be like, man, if we had just done this thing, then if we could have just known this little bit of information 4 years ago, or whatever the time span is, and been like, if I had known this, then maybe I would have done it differently. And it's just like that. How could I have possibly hedged my bets differently than I did?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we've definitely had a lot of learning experiences over the years that have provided some very interesting insight on different corners of the punk rock world and how things work behind the scenes and stuff like that. And of course, there's moments where we're like, man, if we would have done this or that or the other thing, maybe it would have been different. You know, we have to think about all the decisions we made to, you know, when we did this record label and not that record label, when we did this tour and not that tour, when we played this show and not that show, whatever, you know what I mean, whatever goes on. So, yeah, of course. And there's 1,000 things I wish I knew then that I know now, but we're playing with the cards that we dealt ourselves, essentially, based on the decisions that we made and just kind of hoping that it works out, you know?
No, yeah, yeah. That's just kind of that's life for you. And I wonder, even though it's not directly. I wonder if a lot of these ideas are not what's reflected on the new record.
Well, I mean, I think that there's certainly songs that put that idea across.
And some
Sink or
metaphorical way.
Swim. Yeah, Sink or Swim is about exactly this, I guess, if I had to say what it means to me. It's definitely about getting in the van, doing the same thing over and over, and then trying to make up your mind about like whether or not it's worth it, and feeling like you're never going to be the thing that people are going to care about. Like it's never going to really come to you. So it's about that. It's talking about like I don't know, getting up and doing the same thing over and over every day, not seeing any push forward, but still giving the same amount of effort, and then wondering if it's worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, and that's something I feel like a lot about in life. I find myself thinking about a lot of times whether the idea of like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Have I just grown complacent with what I'm doing, and I'm like afraid of not doing it anymore because I don't know what else to do?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true, and I think that a lot of bands do stuff like, you know, they burn themselves out or they punish themselves by not giving it up and living through embarrassing shows or embarrassing tours or just putting out records that are subpar. Like bands know, you definitely know when you're doing that shit. So I don't know, man. I mean, in an effort to, I'm not saying quit while we're ahead, but, you know, try to make the smart decision about how to sustain the band. I mean, I'm not saying that we would break up. I don't even think anybody considers it to be that, but it's just like we'd have to take a hard look at how much time we actually spend on Pentimento, you know what I mean? If we're not able to do things like get better tours and be out more where it can make sense for us, you know? So that's just where it's at for a lot of people, I suppose, and it's no different. I mean, of course, it bums me out and stuff like that to think about it that way because I want to be optimistic and stuff. But you know, I want to be real about it too, and I don't want to make it like a thing that we just have to shove in people's faces or like beg people to like our band. You know, it's not really integral, and I would want the art that we put out to mean more than just a band that's being annoying. You know, so.
No, I completely understand that. You wanna be the first one to know that it's over for you. Like you don't want
There
to
you
like
go.
realize that everyone else knows it's over and you're still fucking going at it.
Yeah, man, exactly. I don't want to embarrass what we have done, you know, by
Exactly.
putting us in a position like to just you know, playing on the minimal amount of success that we've experienced so far. There's only so much we can do, you know. And if it doesn't catch on or, you know, more people don't start to get into it, that's not anybody's fault. It's just the way things go. And I will still be proud of this record. I'll still be proud of the art. I'll still be proud of what we got to accomplish and all the things I got to do because of the band and excited about that. But, you know, I think that's probably where it would end, and I would just continue to do things musically, but on a smaller, more independent level, you know?
Yeah, I guess I was gonna ask you about that because you do dabble in other things in the music business. So would you try? Do you think in your mind you stay in the music business to some degree, or do you walk away altogether? It's kind of hard to think about walking away altogether at this point.
Um, well, I mean, I guess like, of course, I don't think I could ever stop making music to any degree. You know, I would always try to be involved in some sort of creative project. I would like to shift some focus to like visual art. I'm terrible at it. I don't know anything about it, but I think about like doing cartoons a lot. And a friend of mine, and I have been talking about an idea for a cartoon for a super long time and trying to figure out how to get into animation and drawing goofy sort of demo characters basically, and coming up with little storylines and stuff just to try something else. But I mean, yeah, I do producing at GCR for bands and stuff like that, so I'm sure that would still happen if I was able to. I give drum lessons in the area too, so I'm sure I would still do something like that. But I don't know that I would ever jump into a new project and try to like tour and do the thing all over again. I don't know if I have that in me. Maybe like doing fill-in stuff, or if Reggie and the Full Effect decided to go out, that's a possibility, but man, it would have to be like a sweet deal. You know what I mean? Because I think that if the time is up for Pentimento, then it's probably about time that I get serious about like the actual work that I have to do, and try to take that route, because I probably wouldn't end up going back to school, and I don't want to live in a 1-bedroom, 3rd-floor apartment for the rest of my life. So I got to figure that out soon,
No, yeah, that's that grown up stuff, and that's that like inner battle too. Plus, as much as you're very well established in being your own person, but there's always like that voice in the back of your head that's like, at some point in life, I should probably get my proverbial shit together. Like
1,000%.
Get somewhere.
Dude,
on
I
par
think
with
about
all
it
these
every
people.
day. I think about it every fucking day, and it's just like I don't ever feel like I have it together. Like when, okay, it's cool to have a job that's steady and lets me tour. It's cool to have a band that's able to tour. It's cool to put out records and stuff, but by no means do I feel like I have my shit together. I mean, this morning I paid for my coffee with a sticker card that you get from this particular Tim Hortons, and you get little stickers and you stick them on the thing, and if you get enough, you get a free coffee. Yesterday I was walking around and I was like checking all these coffee cups on the ground for these stickers, because I knew I wasn't going to have any money to buy coffee today, but I knew I was going to need one. So I was like, dude, I got to do something about this. And so I got these stupid sticker things, and it's just so strange. Like, that's really where I'm at, man. That's like that's a real thing. I'm like looking for free coffee cards. It's so strange. But
no, I get that.
It's fine. It's cool,
That's part, yeah, but I have those days. Actually today, even this morning, I got an invite on Facebook to something back in Michigan with like where some of my classmates, because we're getting close to that 10-year anniversary that I hate to think about, and they were like, we should, they were like, we should get together and like have dinner or something around the holidays if everyone wants to. And in my head, I had that same exact thought where you just ran through it, where you're like, it's cool that I do this and it's cool that I do that, and I'm always like, but when I'm sitting across from all these people I went to high school with who have families, some are on their second marriages, and they have career jobs, none of my cool shit matters.
None.
It's not cool to them. It's
just
not cool to them at all.
Exactly. And I mean, I have other friends who like, I think that they have their shit together so well, and of course they don't think so, but I look at the things that they do, like, some of them are involved in stuff like stand-up comedy, or I have a really good friend who works at a laboratory that his father owns where they test food for the FDA, and he like went to college to be a straight-up scientist, and this dude makes close to 6 figures a year, and he's my age. I've been friends with him for over a decade, and he used to play in punk bands and still kind of does, and like he's like got his own place, and it's beautiful, and he's like good looking dude, and he's super smart and super fun to hang out with and stuff. And every time we hang out, he's like telling me about his life, and he's like, dude, I can't get it together, man. I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, man, are you kidding me? Like, you're perfect, and I want to be you so bad. But he, what I mean? That's just a thing for everybody. It's totally subjective, and it makes it very interesting to think about how, like, I don't know, how everybody thinks that their life is garbage, and in reality, nothing is fucking wrong. You just, I don't know. You know how it goes, man. It's like, listening to other people and their problems and then thinking about your own always puts it in some kind of perspective. Whether you think you're better or worse off, it's just it changes every 10 minutes, you know. So I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. It's all like how you frame it, and it's as you get older, it's like, why do I frame it that like it's different for everyone, like what they assume is like established or stable or whatever. Because I get that. Like Craig, the guy that co-owns Antique with me, like he's married, he has a daughter that's in like preschool, he does freelance design work full time and makes way more money than I do writing about music. And I constantly am just like, how do I get to where you are? Because you're like a year older than me, and I'm like, where did I take the wrong turn that I'm like here and you're there? And he's always like, oh, but I want to do all these things, and I'm like, man, if there are still like levels above you, like I'm screwed. Like, I would be happy just to get to your level.
Dude, I mean, I totally understand, and I think that like being in a band, you sometimes can't help but compare your situation to the other bands that are doing their thing, and
True.
that's a hard thing to look at too. It's just like, man, you know, like at least these guys are getting support tours, or at least these guys are on this record label that's so cool right now, or you know, oh my God, these guys are bringing like 100 kids a night. That's so sick. And I don't know, man. It's really hard. I think like one of the biggest lessons we've learned is to stop doing that. You know, like worrying about our own stuff is the most important thing. So we have to stop thinking about what bands that are younger than us are killing it, or you know, however that goes. So it's just one of those things where you have to kind of check your jealousy and not get involved that way and not think about things like that, because the more you worry about yourself, you know, the more I feel like you're able to push forward in a real way. So
No, absolutely. You kind of got to stay in your own lane. Like at the end of the day.
exactly that.
All right, well, this has been fun. We talked so little about the record. I guess we talked about it a lot. I don't know, but we've had a good conversation. So either way, people get their time's worth.
Well, yeah, man, I definitely appreciate being a part of the podcast and getting to kind of like shed some light on some of the weird things. So.
Dude, no, it's fun because you and I chat and we get a lot of chances to talk. But usually, if we talk, as much as like I love chatting with you, we're both so busy that I feel like anytime we talk, it's usually very like need based, where it's like, listen, I want to catch up all in the world, but right now I need like this thing, or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's like being an adult for you, I guess. It's just like
that's
you know
life in the
I mean?
music industry and being an adult.
You're absolutely right, man, for sure.
But we'll catch up soon. You guys, you got this tour. Like by the time this comes out, the tour I think will already be off because you go out next week, right?
Yes, sir. I think we're going to be able to stream the record on the 14th when we leave for tour, and it'll be out on the 23rd. And we should be releasing a music video soon for My Solution is in the Lake. We just finished up shooting that with our friend Taylor Rambo, who's done some work for us in the past, and he's worked for some other bands. He's killing it. So yeah, definitely looking forward to putting that out. And the record's out on the 23rd. And that's what I got for you.
Yeah. And then you're in Boston at the beginning of November, so we can see each other then. So if anyone wants to see both of us together, they come to the Boston show.
Yeah, that would rule, man. That would definitely rule.
The Middle East. And do you guys have, I guess that's all you guys have kind of revealed. Do you have more things for the end of the year that you can't talk about yet? Or is this like it?
We're working on stuff like some spring plans right now, trying to see what we can do for tour-wise for spring.
All right. I mean, that's fine. That's good.
Yeah, we've got some stuff in the pipeline our booking agent is looking into now, so he's got a good feeling that we might be able to land some cool support stuff for spring. So we don't even really know what he's got in mind, but he's working on it apparently, so we just got to trust that. And the music video thing is very exciting for us. We should have a couple of them out for the album cycle, maybe some stuff that isn't so expected. And that's it. I mean, that's pretty much what we have in the pipeline. We're just crossing our fingers that we're able to do some cool support tours and stuff like that after this headliner. But definitely looking forward to it because Better Off is awesome. A Will Away is awesome. Caleb and Carolyn, I know they're relatively unknown, but it's this acoustic duo from here in Buffalo that we're good friends with, and they are just like incredible musicians. So I really hope that people come out early for this tour and check that out because it's super cool.
Is the unexpected thing the Pentimento dance? Because I've been waiting, the signature Pentimento dance.
Dude, I think that's the thing we're missing for sure. If we had a dance, we might be able to at least have some crossover potential for the hip hop world.
I imagine that it's like the Charlie Brown dance with like your arms at your side and your head kind of at the ground, just kind of shoegazing, but in rhythm.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that would probably work. We'll have to see what happens at the shows. This record is like slow and stuff, so I don't really know how it's going to translate live, but we'll see.
We'll see. It'll be moody. Maybe that can be a challenge. You know, the tour's going to be underway. If kids want to go out and invent the Pentimento dance, this would be a good time for them to know about it.
Yeah, maybe it'll just be like punching myself in the face until my teeth fall out. That's like what I would imagine our dance would be.
That, or I also see just like kids holding each other, just like sadly, reflecting.
Oh yeah,
just being sad in the crowd.
Yeah, maybe it could be something a little less violent. So
wiping your friend's tears away, just like.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. Well, the new album's fantastic, and I'm glad that we got to talk about that and just life for a little bit, because I feel like anytime we do, we go like way down the life rabbit hole, which is why I love to chat with you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it too. So thanks a lot for having me on and talking about things other than like what our band name is or something.
Yeah, your band name sounds like a spice. I saw that tweet. It made me chuckle really hard.
I was like awake for no reason at like 5 a.m, and I jumped on Twitter and I was like, dude, what is this about? Like, where did this one come from? So I just had to retweet it because I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad that it made you laugh too, because I was like, that is pretty funny. Like, I've heard a lot of bad Pentimento jokes, but that one worked for me.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't mind it at all. I wasn't offended. I was just like, a spice, huh? Okay, that's cool. That's a new one.
That's a new one. All right, man. You have a great day, and best of luck on this tour. I'll see you in November, so we'll see each other then.
Sounds great, brother.
All right.
Thank you so much.